We are living in an epidemic of loneliness. It's a really difficult subject, and that's why I want to talk about it in today's video and share 3 things with you. 1, why loneliness is normal. 2, a creative cure for loneliness that I've used with myself and with my clients. And number 3, how you can go from loneliness to connection. So since you're here, you've probably experienced loneliness yourself, right? And you wouldn't be alone. See what I did there? The thing is, we all feel lonely from time to time. And actually, our Surgeon General here in the United States has written a report a few years ago, and it turns out that over half of Americans report feeling chronic loneliness. And who knows, maybe that number is even bigger, because who really wants to admit when they're feeling lonely? I know I don't. So here's why loneliness is normal. The thing is, feeling lonely from time to time is just part of the human condition. It's part of what we get by being alive in these human bodies and interacting with people. It's just normal to feel lonely from time to time. And there's a couple different ways I think about loneliness: circumstantial loneliness and existential loneliness. What I mean by circumstantial loneliness is this has to do with your circumstances. So it could be you have moved to a new city and you don't know anyone, or you're starting a new school and you're the new kid on the block, or you are in a new work situation, again, brand new person, have to get to know all these new people. That can feel so isolating and alone. Or if you're like me, you live in a really rural, remote area, not close to a lot of people. And so that can feel really lonely. Now, besides circumstantial loneliness, a lot of the times the loneliness that we're experiencing really just feels existential. Yeah, that probably sounds very dark, poet, but I'm curious to hear, let me know in the comments what, if any, of these resonate with you. How do you experience loneliness? So what I mean by existential loneliness is when you are at a party, for example, you're surrounded by people and you feel all alone. I've actually felt this way in big cities where, I'm surrounded by people but feel utterly alone. Maybe you're an introvert and feel shy around other people. That can feel very lonely especially because we do live in a world where the majority of people are extroverted, not introverted, and we see how other people are doing life. They're extroverting, and it seems so easy and natural for them because it is, and then we compare ourselves, and that can feel incredibly lonely. Or maybe in your relationships, you're in close relationships with people or live with people, and you just feel like they don't really see you or get you. More on that in a second. Other ways of experiencing existential loneliness is if you're a business owner or a boss, you're someone in charge of other people. That can feel incredibly lonely when you're the one making all the difficult decisions, when you're responsible for other people. It can be hard to find others who really get what kind of responsibilities are weighing on you. It can be very isolating to be, there is this saying, I don't recall it exactly, but this idea that it's lonely at the top, right? Another way we can experience this sense of existential loneliness is when we feel like the other, or we are the other. We're surrounded by people who are just incredibly different from us. I experienced this being a foreigner in a foreign country as an expat living abroad. So I definitely stick out. I don't look like all the people around me, and so that draws attention to me. And it can also feel very isolating to be the other. So Or sometimes it's more like, maybe you're a poet. Let's say you're a poet and you're surrounded by friends and colleagues and coworkers who just really don't read or don't care about literature or want to read poetry. And so you're someone who loves all things reading and art and just don't have enough people around you who have the same interests. And that way we can feel so much like the other, like almost like an alien. Have you ever felt that way? Like, where are my people? If you are neurodiverse and think and feel things differently than most of the world around you, it is incredibly lonely to feel that way. And this is one of my favorite, very close to my heart. Maybe you're an artist. And I want to share with you a quote that the art critic Jerry Saltz shared in his article called My Life as a Failed Artist. Yeah, before he became an art critic, he was a painter, and then he quit being an artist. He said, "Being an artist also made me realize that I wasn't built for the type of loneliness that comes from art." And when I read that, it just rang a lot of bells for me because, when you're doing your art, most of the time, unless you're playing in a band or something, but if you're painting or writing, those are very solitary activities. Just being an artist like that requires us to spend a lot of time alone and a lot of time alone with our thoughts, which can be an inhospitable place if you're not feeling so great about yourself. And so when Jerry Saltz wrote this, I just felt this sense of relief, like, oh, he really gets it. That is a real thing. I never really put words to that before. I knew that making art meant a lot of alone time, right? And even though I'm incredibly introverted and I can be almost like a professional hermit, it is very lonely to be making your art in a vacuum, and not getting feedback from people, or just like feel so strange because here I am doing this thing for so many hours a day by myself with my own thoughts. And it's just weird, sometimes. Or maybe I should just be speaking for myself on the weird thing. Yeah, I'm a total weirdo. And by the way, all these existential experiences of loneliness are something I experience and wrestle with. And that is why, I just felt it was very important to address this subject. I'm hoping by doing so that some of you will come knock on the door in the comments and say, yeah, me too. Thank you for bringing this up. So anyway, I wanted to just share this other quote with you from, speaking of poets and writers. You may have heard of May Sarton, and she's quite famous for her published journals, including one called Journal of a Solitude. And I recommend that if you're into reading journals from other people. And I think it is just such an incredible look into this solitary activity of making our art. And May Sarton said this, I'm just looking at my notes here. She said, "It isn't easy being a woman poet, and this may be true of the woman writer, the woman artist. One has always seemed to be a little bit outside the mainstream, not at the center of life." Yeah, that says a lot, right? So what I really want you to take away, and we're getting to the second point, which is the cure for loneliness, which I'm really excited to share with you, that whatever the source of your loneliness, there is a cure, there is a way out. And it's one I've used ever since I was a teenager, and I have been showing other people how to do this in my career for over 30 years now. And I'll warn you, it's going to sound incredibly counterintuitive at first. Right, this is actually going to be just easier if I show you. This is one of my visual journals. It's all painted and collaged in. And I made this visual journal long ago. when I was on a personal pilgrimage of the heart, as I called it. I spent a year alone traveling in a Volkswagen camper in the year 2001 to 2002. And I created this visual journal. I actually probably could make a whole video about this. If you're interested in that, I can share that with you. But there is this quote in here by Carolyn Casey that I typed up from one of her books. And it says, "Solitude is the cure for loneliness. Like cures like." So that's why I believe that one of the best cures for loneliness, certainly my cure for loneliness, is to keep a journal. So as I've mentioned and showed in a lot of my other videos, I love to keep all different types of journals, including visual journals and written journals. But before we get to doing some journal writing and talking about going from loneliness to connection, I just want to share with you 5 of the ways that keeping a journal, we're going to journal together in just a few minutes, written journal and a plain old notebook, 5 of the ways that keeping a journal can help you deal with loneliness. So number 1 is journal writing opens up a dialogue with yourself. Keeping a journal is like having an intimate conversation with yourself. Within the privacy of your journal, you can tell the truth about your experience. Just getting words on paper and out of your head can be a huge relief. Having a safe space to admit that you're lonely builds your awareness of how you feel. And we can't do anything different about our situation until we're aware of how we feel about it and think about it first. Number 2, your journal is a safe space to express your emotions freely. Strong feelings make us feel vulnerable, and that's why it's often easier just to distract ourselves or stay overly busy so we don't have to stop and feel uncomfortable. By putting thoughts and feelings on paper, you create a safe space to express emotions you might not feel comfortable sharing with someone else. So let your journal be a safe space to express yourself without judgment. This allows you to explore difficult subjects like loneliness and discover how you really feel about things, which can lead to a sense of relief and connection with your inner self. The third way that keeping a journal helps with loneliness is that it helps you find your sense of meaning in the pages of your journal. Journaling helps you explore your values, passions, and life purpose. What or who matters most to you and why? How do I make a difference for the people and things that I care about? These are great questions to ask yourself in your journal. And these are the type of potent questions that take us deeper below the surface of the problems we're facing to help us find meaning in our experiences and even a sense of personal mission. And so this is how journaling can help us build a stronger sense of self, which can alleviate feelings of loneliness. Number 4, daily journaling can be a positive routine to heal loneliness. A daily journaling habit develops a strong relationship with yourself. And over time, you can rely on your journal to give you insight, advice, and encouragement, just like you'd get from a best friend, coach, a good parent, or teacher. Keeping a daily journal can be quick, it's easy, and it's practically free. All you need is a simple notebook. So taking a few minutes each day to journal can provide structure and a sense of connection with yourself, reducing feelings of isolation. And finally, number 5, daily journaling is made so much easier with journal writing prompts. And we're going to be journaling together at the end of this video, but if you haven't seen the first video I made in this series about the daily journal challenge, then you can check that out later. I will link it in the description box below, but it goes into more detail about what the prompts do and how to use them. So now that we've covered the first two items on our agenda today, why loneliness is normal, the creative cure for loneliness, let's talk about how to go from loneliness to connection. So keeping a journal is the first step in going from loneliness to connection, because it's really hard to connect with others unless you have this really solid relationship with yourself. And as I mentioned, once you've been journaling for a while, and it only takes a few minutes a day, then your journal really becomes this dialogue that you're having with yourself, and it becomes a way to get advice, to confide, just like you would your best friend. I think of my journaling practice as a way of filling my own well, filling my emotional well, filling my creative well. It's just so incredibly rejuvenating to do this. And once you have been journaling, you might wonder, well, is there anyone else out there doing this? Where are other people like me? And this is going from loneliness to connection. There are so many other people out there journaling. It's amazing. And that's really a huge reason why I'm sharing all of this on YouTube, even though it's incredibly outside of my introverted comfort zone to do so, is that back in the day when I was teaching weekly journaling, writing, painting, and visual journaling classes back in San Francisco, I started a blog. This was in 2002 that I started my blog originally. And the reason I did it was so that I could show examples of what I was creating journal pages about and talk about my process and share what materials I was using, because I didn't want to take up time with my students in class to talk about my own process. I also didn't want to show a lot of my work in class because that can be really intimidating to people. I had been journaling for so many years, visual journaling, and I just felt like it's better if they're looking at their own work and the other students' work rather than just always showing my work to people. So I left showing my own work to my blog. And again, it was absolutely terrifying. I remember, I put off starting my blog for years, even though 2002 was, I guess, kind of an early time to start blogging. But I had thought about it for a really long time, and I had done websites for other people at that point. But it just felt so exposing to put my work out there in the world. And actually, this fear of being seen is going to be a topic for my next video in this series. So if you struggle with that, you're going to want to subscribe and tune into that episode. But teaching workshops, blogging, making these YouTube videos, my whole purpose behind it was to start creating community around visual journaling. And in 2009, I started teaching online, and I really felt like Facebook groups and things like that weren't the safest place at all for people to be sharing their creative process. So I teach all of my classes in a private forum, a private classroom that's interactive, and people can show their work and talk about their work, but it's only on our app in our own private classroom. So it's not social media connected. And I don't know about you, but as someone who has taken a lot of workshops and has been teaching, I don't know how many hundreds of workshops that I've taught in the last 30 years, workshops on visual journaling, art, painting, all of the things. These are where I have met my very best friends in life. Whether I'm a student or whether I'm a teacher, I have friends who I have met over 30 years ago in different workshops, and we are still in touch. We still hang out together. We're still friends. My friend group is all around the world, from teaching in different places and going to workshops in different places. And same with this YouTube channel. I feel like this is such an incredible way to connect with so many like-minded people around the world. And one of my deepest values is in creating community for creative women or women who want to create more. and people who want to use their creativity to support their mental and emotional health and well-being, because I'm a former art therapist. I just didn't like working in psychiatric hospitals. I rather kind of work out in the wild, not doing art therapy per se, but using creativity for healing and self-discovery. Going from loneliness to connection can really be as simple as showing up here in the comments, looking for other YouTubes on the subject of creativity and healing, or whatever your modality is, whether it's painting, writing, or something else. Looking for groups in your community. For about 10 years now, I've been teaching facilitators. I've been teaching this class I call Creativity Workshop Facilitator Training to help people with no experience teaching, who just love the healing aspect of creativity, to teach their own in-person workshops in their communities. Because again, I said this creative community is a huge value of mine, and I really believe that if people are resonating with the material, what I want to do is show them how to do it themselves so they can teach workshops for their own communities, their own churches, schools, wherever that may be. And because teaching workshops has been so incredibly life-giving for me, it's actually given me my whole accidental career in this. I used to just teach workshops on the side, and then it became my full-time thing. But, I started doing it just because I wanted to connect with other people who cared about keeping journals and wanted to talk about personal growth, and were on this leading edge of their own creativity, where they didn't really have role models, and they didn't know what to do, but they wanted to try to figure it out and do it anyway. That is kind of my whole quest here in offering this to you. So I'm just encouraging you to take some of these steps yourself. There are people out there who want to connect, who want you to find them, and vice versa. So I hope to have a lively conversation here in the comments and create a wonderful community of creative women together. Something I used to do to get out of the house, and I especially did this, remember I told you I did this quest traveling alone in a Volkswagen van during 2001, 2002. And so I was out in the world, but instead of writing in my journal inside my van at my camping spot, I would go into town and take my journal into a cafe. And even though I hardly ever talked to anyone, at least I was in public, surrounded by other people. And actually it was kind of cool too, because I was keeping my journal, I was writing in my journal, having a coffee or lunch or something. And sometimes people would come up to me and just ask me what I was doing, especially if I was sketching something, not so much if I was writing. But that was a long time ago, and I think it's even more normal now to see people out in the wild writing in their journals. So be brave, go out there and journal in public, and maybe even say hi to someone if you see them in the cafe working in their journal. Ask them if they're part of a writing group or a journaling group or a class, or if they know other people who like to journal together. Other things I've done is have art dates with friends on a weekly basis, where we just get together and meet up at each other's house or go out to a cafe and journal together. That's a super fun thing to do. Okay, without further ado, let's do some journaling together after all that. So all you need is a notebook and something to write with, and we're going to take our inspiration from the Caroline Casey quote that I read earlier. Solitude is the cure for loneliness. Like cures like. And I have a journal prompt for you that I've created being inspired by that quote. We'll journal together for 3 minutes. I'm going to set a timer and we'll go. Writing in my journal eases loneliness because. Thanks so much for journaling with me today. I really appreciate you. And in the description box, below the video, I've got a bunch of resources for you on my classes, links to all sorts of goodies. And if you want to catch the first episode in this series, you can look for that video right up there. See you next time.